Let's talk about social networks and social support. When we talk about social networks and social support, we're not necessarily going to be talking about any one or two particular theories, but we're going to be talking about a whole body of work that indicates the importance of both social networks and social support to health. And we'll talk about how we can capitalize on those in our health interventions. There is a huge amount of research showing that health, behavior, and even mortality are influenced by interpersonal relationships. There is a vast amount of research showing the importance of social support to health. We know that people with strong social networks and social support have lower rates of chronic disease, substance abuse, mental health issues, and have lower rates of all-cause mortality. Social networks can also have a positive or negative influence on behavior. We know that we are influenced by the people in our lives that we see every day or that are more peripherally involved in our lives. Science tells us that our relationships with other people can play a key role in our health, and these can be positive or negative. Here's a quote that generally says that, by and large, there is a huge body of research, and this quote is from 1987, so this holds even more true today. But by and large, research indicates overall that our relationships with other people and our social networks and social support have causal effects on our health, our exposure to stress, and the relationship between stress and health. So that's really what we're going to dig into today. Let's start by defining some of our key terms. What are social networks? Social networks are essentially a structure made of individuals or organizations made of individuals that are connected by different types or classes of relationships. For example, you can be connected to another person by friendship, kinship, via a financial exchange. You could be related to them by blood or by law. You could be connected to somebody based on your beliefs or your lack of similar beliefs. And this image on this slide shows how we represent social networks in science. Each dot is called a node, and each node represents an individual. And we have lines between each node to show who's related to who. So the red dot in this example is you. And we use these lines to show different people that we're connected to may also be connected, and they're connected to different people. And we can see kind of how individuals in society can be grouped together. Why do social networks matter? We know that social networks serve a number of different functions, and each of these functions impact behavior and health in a different way. And we believe that it is very important to understand all of the ways that an individual can be helped, hurt, or influenced by the other people that are in their social network. And really the ultimate goal in public health is to figure out how to use somebody's social network to help improve their health. There are a number of different functions or outcomes of social networks, and it should be noted that these are not mutually exclusive. One function or outcome is social capital. This is individuals joining together to better their social standing. This has an economic component. Social influence, also called social learning. This is something that comes up in social cognitive theory as well. We learn from those around us. We see what other people are doing, whether or not they directly teach us how to engage in certain behaviors or perform certain skills. We are influenced by watching and by interacting with other people and seeing what they do. There's also a negative function of social networks, unfortunately, and that's social undermining. So this is the negative experience, the judgment that you may feel, or the if somebody in your social network puts you down, this can have a negative outcome on your health, and it's a negative function of a social network. Ending on more positive functions of social networks, companionship. So everybody wants to have other individuals that they can share positive experiences with and spend time with in a positive way. And what comes out of companionship is social support. So the reason that we have woven social networks and social support together in this lecture is because they really are intertwined. You can't have social support without also talking about social networks, and you can't talk about social networks without talking about social support. So there are some other key terminology that we use when we talk about social networks. So social networks have a number of different structural features, and each one of these features impacts the way that individuals in the network interact and what they get out of the interaction, what they get by being connected to another person. So here's some of the key terms when it comes to describing the structural features of networks. The first is reciprocity. So this is the extent to which support across individuals is both given and received. Intensity is the degree of closeness emotionally that individuals feel. So you can have somebody in your social network that you don't feel that close with, and so the effect of that relationship on your health and your behavior may be different than the effect of your relationship with somebody who you feel an intense emotional bond with. Then we have complexity. You know that different people in your life can serve different roles for you at different times of need, and some individuals can serve a number of different roles for you. So the amount of complexity in your social network also can play a role in how your social network influences your health. Then we have the density. So within your social network, how much do the different people interact with each other and interact with you? Then we have homogeneity. So the extent of similarity across people within your social network. But we do know that individuals like to surround themselves at least part of the time with individuals who share certain characteristics or beliefs, and that can be very comforting. Then we have directionality. So the extent of equal power and influence across the network. In a lot of social networks, there are individuals that have more power or influence over other people. And this could be advantageous, or it could really harm the social network if they're trying to assert power in a negative way over others or influence other people's behavior in a negative way. So an example might be in an adolescent social group, there may be one dominant central person in the social network, and they may be a bully, or they may try drugs and they may spread that or really harm the other people in their social network. And then another feature is geographic dispersion. So where are the people in your social network located in relation to you physically? That can play a key role. Now, one thing that's interesting about geographic dispersion is that it's becoming less of an issue than it used to be with social media and with technology. Now it's not as negative if your best friends and your family members live in another state or not close to you, because we have ways of communicating with them and maintaining those social networks from afar. So those are some of the features of social networks that can explain how social networks influence individuals, and those are different pieces that we like to study to see exactly how they influence health and individuals' behaviors. So as I mentioned earlier, social support is what we get out of social networks, essentially. It's one of the things that we get out of social networks. And there's different ways of viewing social support. There's different types of social support. The key one that everybody thinks about is functional social support, and within that there are a number of different subtypes. The first subtype is perceived social support, and this one's really interesting. This is somebody's perception of how much support is available to them. What's interesting about that is that people have different definitions of how much support is available to them, and they may, depending on their personality type or current state of mind, underestimate or overestimate the support available to them. And it's really important to assess perceived social support, because if somebody really does have a lot of people available to help them, but for some reason they don't perceive that to be true. They think that they do not have a lot of support. That could indicate a different need, a different type of intervention need than if somebody has low perceived social support and they really don't have a lot of social support. Another thing that's really interesting is that, let's say somebody doesn't have a lot of social support. They don't have a lot of people that they can count on, but they feel like they do. Then that kind of cancels out that lack of tangible social support. They can experience all of the benefits of social support. It's really interesting. Then we have received social support. So this is the measure of actual support you did receive from people in your network. So this is kind of the countermeasure to perceived social support. Next, we have emotional support. This is most often what people think of when they hear the term social support. So this is empathy, love, and caring that you receive from other people in your network. And we have belonging, and this is more of a sense of belonging. So do you have people that you can hang out with? Are there people in your social network that when you're around, you feel like you belong and you don't stand out in a negative way? Next, there's informational support, and this is support that you get from individuals in terms of advice, suggestions, or information. Finally, there's tangible or instrumental support. So this is actual tangible aid and services. This is your car breaks down and you need a ride. You need money and you need to borrow it from somebody. When individuals help you in a specific concrete way or provide you with a service, that's tangible or instrumental support. In contrast, informational support is when you need advice. So you've gone through a breakup or you're having problems at work, who you call and ask for advice, at that point they're giving you informational support. And you may recall that when we were talking about different features of social networks, we talked about how different people can play multiple roles in your social network, and this gets at that. So the same person, so let's say my mom, I can get all of these types of support from my mom because I know I can count on her to be there emotionally and physically for me when I need her. But we also all have those friends who we can call to give advice, but when we actually need them to come over or to lend us money, they're not necessarily the best person to go to. So it's interesting to think about the different ways that individuals support you who are in your social network.